Brian, first of all, can we talk about the new recordings? What actually are you doing in the studio right now?
Well, we're basically working on new stuff. 15 Big Ones, our current album, has about half and half, oldies and newies. We call them newies, new songs and old songs, classic songs, you know. And but the new album, which we don't have a title for, will have a little more new material than old this time. One of them is named Hey Little Tomboy. It's about a little girl who's sort of a roughneck. You know what a tomboy is, anyway. And this guy convinces her to become a pretty girl, and sure enough, she slowly turns into a pretty, starts shaving her legs and wears short skirts and, you know, and puts some lipstick on and makeup, so she's a little tomboy, and that's one of the songs. So we're very happy with it.
Yeah. How much have you got to put together?
We have
now for
about
that
10 out of 12. We're going to have 12 cuts. 15 Big Ones has 15 cuts on it. This album will have 12 cuts, probably 12 or 13. So we have around 10 out of the 12. So we're ready. It'll be ready late September, 1st of October.
Yeah. Who's augmenting the band? What musicians have you got with the Beach Boys?
Well, the
in
musicians are basically Dennis Wilson, Carl Wilson, Billy Hinchy, who's in the Beach Boys,
right.
Eddie Carter, Steve Douglas, who's used to play on the Phil Spector. We have several of the Phil Spector recording studio artists with us that we have for our sessions. So it works out fine. We have a ball. We don't ever record without more than 10 guys.
Because the last time I was over here talking with the Beach Boys, Brian, I was over at the studio in Santa Monica, and you were doing quite a lot of recording there at that point, and then took some of the material up to Caribou. Now, there are about 3 or 4 tracks that were kind of half finished at that point. Are they going to be among the things that are going to be used?
Those 3 or 4 tracks, do you remember any of the titles?
I don't remember titles, except that one is related to water very closely. It's a river thing.
Oh, that was Dennis's song.
That's right.
The river song, right, the riverboat song.
Yeah.
That's complete, yes. Most of those things that you heard are complete now. So we're rolling away.
So when do you think that'll be finished now?
Well, it should be finished. Like I say, we should have the album done by late September. Hopefully, and it should be a good album. It should be a very good album. I'm going to call the album Brian's in Love. I don't think they'll go for it, though.
Because Rock and Roll Music and Now It's Okay have just come out as singles here. And Rock and Roll Music was the biggest new hit single you've had for quite a while, isn't it, really?
It's very big. We haven't had a single that big in a long time. Last one we had was Do It Again, I think, in '67. We haven't had very many really big singles. We've had big albums, you know. But Rock and Roll Music, because of the chorus, you know, rock, roll, rockin' in a roll. It had that feeling, you know. It's the old Chuck Berry feeling. So we really got some spirit in it.
Because the thing that interested me so much about the album too, you know, with Sunflower first, then Surf's Up and Holland going off in much sort of gentler direction, really, wasn't it? Now you've come back again to much closer to the sound that people associated with the Beach Boys some years ago.
You see, basically, our forte is harmonics. We have a harmony blend because we're brothers and a cousin. We're a family, like the King Sisters, you know. There's a certain family blend. Our throats are similar or something. I don't know what the case is. We all have different voices, but nevertheless we blend well. And we do have a lot of harmonies coming up for the album.
So it'll be will it be close to 15 Big Ones in terms of feel?
It will be close, but there are, like for instance, we have a song called My Solution, which is a very odd song that has strange chords, not regular triad chords. They're chords, the notes are bunched up, and it tells the story about how a guy found an old damsel outside his castle, decided to make her part of an experiment. Anyway, he goes on to say, what have I done with my solution, my instant aid to evolution? It's about a guy who found a solution. You know, it's a very odd, it's a Boris Karloff, eerie type of thing. So it's one of our more far out left field things that we've done.
Who are you collaborating with most now in your
Well, I collaborate with Mike Love mostly, and sometimes Carl. There's a guy named Van Dyke Parks that I used to collaborate with on Heroes and Villains with him.
That's right.
And but we don't work as much anymore.
Yeah. So, what? How are you enjoying getting involved back with the band now, then, Brian?
Well, the band, playing on stage, you mean?
Yes.
On stage. Well, I played Anaheim, which is a very famous stadium in California. And I played that show, and I was very nervous. I was a little shaky. I'm intending to play Washington, D.C., which is going to be a very, very big show, 80,000 people. The guys played to 60 to 80,000 people a night. I mean, they play outdoor gigs all the time, pulling in very big crowds. So I'll be playing with them, and if we come to England, I'm sure I'll be there to play.
Yeah, oh, that would be great.
I want to.
Yeah. Because it amazed me at the time, you know, that you took all the equipment that you took over to Holland to record the Holland album and then bring it all the way back. I mean, first of all, I know the cost was tremendous.
The cost was tremendous. I mean, the equipment in the first place cost $190,000 to build. It's an elaborate system built by a genius, Steve Moffat, and it cost quite a bit to make. So, but the shipping costs were tremendous too to bring back.
Yeah.
But we brought back our tapes of Holland. We brought them back to America. We dubbed them down here in America and put the album out. It was a pretty big success.
Did you do the fairy tale in Holland as well?
Oh, Fairy Tale was written. As a matter of fact, I played the Randy Newman album, Sail Away. I don't know if anyone's heard that, but it's a great album. I used that for inspiration. I played that album over and over, sit there with a pencil, writing this fairy tale, but I had to have that album playing for some reason, for inspiration. And it was the wildest thing. I couldn't do it without it. There I wasn't concentrating on what he was saying. I was just concentrating on the lyrics of the fairy tale. There was a mansion on a hill, but deep in a secret kingdom where a young prince lived, you know, like that.
So what happened then? You got back from Holland, Brian, because that's the point then that I didn't hear very much about what you
recluse period started.
Yeah.
I started generally what I considered a recluse period where I was confined in my bedroom. I was taking drugs. I was snorting cocaine, which I don't agree with. I mean, I don't get behind anyone snorting cocaine. It's a very bad drug, but I did, and I did it. I had a lot of money. Of course, I'm a millionaire, and I was able to get a hold of all these drugs, you know, and they fucked. I was able to get a hold of all these drugs, and they messed me up. They messed my mind up.
So how did you begin to get the motivation to start playing and recording with the band again? What did it happen first in the studio?
Well, what happened was my wife called a doctor, Dr. Gene Landy, and I began a series of experiments with them for rehabilitation and social control and social grace and a series of therapy meetings, and it's done me a lot of good, and I've stayed off the drugs and come back into my own. And between my wife, the doctors, and my brothers, and my mother, and a couple friends, they all convinced me to get out of my room, get back in there in the studio, and get to work, which I did, and I'm very grateful for, because it's making me a lot of money, and it's making people happy, which is my first goal, to make people happy.
Because when I was over here last time, people were saying, and I can remember almost word for word a quote, that Brian Wilson, more than anybody else, has had a profound effect over American rock music for the next 30 years. Right?
Yeah. Well,
and you look around and you can hear it. Your influence is everywhere, Brian. I mean, do you feel that's a strong responsibility?
Yes, I do, sure, because once you've established yourself as an artist, a producer, somebody who has a style to say, something to say with a definite, profound effect, you feel obligated to fulfill commitments. In other words, it's an artist's obligation to continue his constructive work, you know, his work. Any artist that you find has that feeling. He feels the need to please, you know, and it's a very personal thing, and it's something that that you work on. It's something that comes with, it's natural, you know. It's a natural thing.
Explain to me some of the techniques that you used. For example, some of the marvelous percussive techniques on Pet Sounds.
Well, on Pet Sounds, which is generally considered an interpretation of the Phil Spector recording style, or utilizing instruments, combining, say, pianos with guitars to form a unique instrument. In other words, if you combine them electronically well enough, you're not going to have a guitar or a piano. You're going to have piano-guitar, a new instrument. And if you use two pianos and two guitars, it's going to be more profound. Combining flutes and piccolos and French horns and trumpets. You see, in the 40s and 50s, arrangements were considered, okay, here, listen to that French horn, or let's listen to this string section now. You know what I mean? It was all a definite sound. There weren't combinations of sound. And with the advent of Phil Spector, we find sound combinations, which, scientifically speaking, is it's a brilliant aspect of sound production.
So just to pick up for the cameras then, Brian, we're talking about pet sounds and the marvellous percussive and instrumental sort of techniques you used on that album. And you were just explaining to me the way that you were putting things together.
Should I explain it again?
Yeah, please.
In Pet Sounds, we utilized what we call the Phil Spector technique, which in the 20th century, it's quite a scientific advancement in music and sound. Namely that it's taking instruments and combining them to form them into a new sound. In other words, if you took a piano and a guitar and combined them properly, sound-wise, mixed the two sounds together, you come up with a new instrument or a new sound. And say you use 3 guitars and 3 pianos, well, that's 6 right there. It's a great sound, and such as combining different forms of horns together and strings and voices combined together to make certain sounds. These are technological advances in music, and we've used them. We're using them in our new album too, and in 15 Big Ones. Also, utilizing the voice, where you have you're used to hearing a voice singing alone. Well, in a lot of cases, artists will put their voice on again, singing the same notes over the same notes, which is 2 voices sounding like one, only there's a mellow effect, because you never can get the 2 notes exactly the same, so they waver. So you get the wave effect, which is very good, a very sweet sound.
So talking about the Pet Sounds period of time, Brian, and just on from there a bit, because there's still some confusion relating to the Smile album, the Smiley Smile album, and the Fire tapes.
Right.
Yeah, can you explain that?
Well, initially we wanted to do an album called Smile, which when we first began it, I had crazy ideas. I was smoking hashish, and the boys were smoking it. And we were laying on the floor singing. From laying on the floor, we put the microphones down on our heads, doing crazy things, and we got into a very strange bag. And we came across a song called Fire, which I was getting pretty far out by that time. Well, it so happens that a building burned down the same day we were doing that, down the street of the studio that we were doing the Fire tapes. I had the musicians wearing fire helmets. I had a guy bring in a bucket with burning wood to smell of smoke in the studio. I mean, I was crazy. Anyway, I began to think that we started that fire somehow mystically, and we ended up destroying the tape, plus destroying a few others of the Smile tape. As a matter of fact, an album called 2020.
That's right, yeah.
Had on it Cabin Essence.
That's right.
That was one of the Smile tapes.
Yeah. And was anything on Sunflower, Brian, from the Smile tapes?
No, nothing on Sunflower.
So Cabin Essence was, in fact, the only one?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's interesting. Which of your albums, now in retrospect, still is your favourite?
I think Friends is my favorite album. It's got some cute little songs on it. It's got we didn't overdub our voices using 2 lead voices. We only used 1 separate single voice, like I was talking about the 2-voice technique. Basically, it was a more intimate sound, and it had a very personal, little folksy kind of a feeling to it. So Friends and Wild Honey, I think, are my 2 favorite albums.
Because 2020 was interesting at the time too. It seemed to go on again, didn't it, from that point? I was thinking particularly of Never Learn Not to Love. And
I love that song. My brother Dennis did that, yeah.
Yes, I love that song. So Sunflower then, let's talk a little bit about Sunflower, because again, that was even mellower in many ways, wasn't it? Sunflower.
Yeah, Sunflower was a very mellow album. It had very articulate little... I went to, wait a minute, there's a song called At My Window, I think, on Sunflower, which was about a little bird. And it's a cute little album. It had a lot of delicacies to it. It was a delicate album, and which I like very much. I like delicate sounds, anything delicate. I love Donovan. I think Donovan's a very delicate artist. I've always loved him.
And Surf's Up, you see, two things that occurred to me, just going back to Pet Sounds for a second, because at the time I think that Pet Sounds was an absolute milestone, and still most people regard it as perhaps one of the top 5 albums ever made. And yet in California, the reaction to that album at the time was kind of disappointing, Brian, wasn't
Yeah, it was very disappointing. We didn't understand that. We thought that we put a lot of work into it, and we figured that we deserved some recognition and success for it. It was relatively successful, but disappointing on the overall scale. And I can't explain it. I can't explain failure of an album. I mean, from one to the next, you never know. I mean, there's Art Garfunkel had. I think he's great. I mean, he had a #1 album, so you never know who's going to break through with a #1 album. Who's, you know, it's very hard to determine.
Because I felt in a way that the same happened to Surf's Up in America, that didn't quite actually, in terms of record sales, hit the mark that it really should have done. Because I think that's a magnificent album.
Right, thank you.
Surf's Up. So, but anyway, let's talk about the future, Brian. And you're recording now. There's concerts on the way. Yeah. What are the long-term plans, medium to long-term plans?
Well, I'm not familiar with all the long-term plans of the group. They do plan to do a lot of touring, and I think they plan to visit England, which I'll be going with them. They plan to. We plan to do a lot of recording. We want to do another Fairy Tale. I'm not quite sure on the content yet, but it'll have little pieces of music like it did in the other one, Mount Vernon and Fairway.
Right.
And but the plans are to do a lot of television, and we're going to do a movie. We did a special, a TV special. I think it's going to be aired in Britain, or already has been. And we plan to do filming, television, touring, and records. We plan to do the whole works.
So when will you be over to Britain?
We don't know exactly. I think it'll be sometime in the spring of next year.
Oh, look forward to that very much indeed.
Okay.
Brian Wilson, thanks a lot.
Thank you.